What a race it was in Bahrain. Truly getting this triple header into action. It had everything from Mad Max, a Norris bottle job, and Russell yet again on the podium. So, can Jeddah produce the same? Well, let's find out. This is everything you need to know for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix 2025. So straight into the main news, well, of just the whole week and the weekend. And I need to talk about something that did happen in Bahrain. And I'll be very short about it because this isn't about Bahrain. But for anyone who didn't notice, Hülkenberg did get disqualified. Basically, a very similar thing to what happened to Hamilton in China. So, could this be happening a bit more this season? Who knows, but that means it's an average of 2 disqualifications for this in 4 races. That's quite high. Then in Jeddah, we almost had a Carlos Sainz grid penalty. However, the FIA realised they'd made a mistake, thinking that Sainz hadn't served his penalty, which he had. So that then got revoked. So there is no Carlos Sainz penalty heading into Jeddah, if you saw any news about that. And then just quickly having a little look at the championship heading into this race weekend. We now have can I call it a 4-way battle for the championship? Realistically, it still looks like a 2 pushing 3 maybe championship battle. But Russell, Verstappen, Piastri and Norris are all separated within 14 points of each other, which is actually crazy because if McLaren have one bad weekend, Russell and Verstappen are right back into it. So it is closer than it seems, considering how great McLaren have been. So props to Russell and Verstappen. And hey, hopefully it can keep this tight for the rest of the season. But then constructor-wise, McLaren on 151 to Mercedes on 93. Yeah, I think it's pretty much clear-cut until there are some big changes potentially. Like I said about Spain, the flexi-wing situation. But if McLaren carry on like this until Spain, I think there's not enough time for anyone to turn it around. So McLaren look very comfortable in the lead of the constructors. So, heading into the stats for Saudi Arabia, and we obviously haven't been around this track very often, so there's not too many winners. However, the most wins does go down to Max Verstappen on 2, and then on the grid we have another driver who's won here, Lewis Hamilton on 1. So, what's quite exciting, because I do think it's another track like Japan, where Sector 1, Max Verstappen can show off his abilities a bit more, so do I think Verstappen will be winning? No. But do I think he'll be in podium contention? I think yes. But we could be getting a new race winner here. Now, will it be one of the McLarens? Most likely. Will it be Piastri? I think so. He's been in brilliant form at the minute. But, like I said, don't count out Russell. Don't count out Verstappen. And hey, maybe we'll get to see a little bit more of those Ferrari upgrades working better at a track like Jeddah. Only time will tell, but wow, there's still a few storylines that we need to write before this triple header finishes off. Then most pole positions around this track. Well, can Yuki Tsunoda hold up to what the second driver has been doing at Red Bull? Because it's Sergio Perez with 2. Sometimes I forget just how good he was at street circuits. So Perez leads on 2. Sadly, he can't add to that. And I'd be very surprised if Yuki Tsunoda put it on pole. I think I'd be screaming after that result. So don't expect that. But again, most likely, unless Verstappen goes for it again, we'll be seeing another new pole sitter this season. And then finally, what does it look like for overtakes around here? Well, we had a whopping 25 last season. Now, of course, we had a slight issue, which happens when everyone hits the DRS trains. Hopefully this doesn't happen again this season. Considering Bahrain last year, we had a bit of the same issue, and this season it was brilliant. Hopefully we can get the same sort of flavour, juiciness to this circuit that we've had before, and hopefully it's not a bore fest. I mean, it wasn't a bore fest in 2024. We still had some good highlights from people like Behrman, but the stats are saying that overtaking isn't going to be the greatest around here. But hey, we had Bahrain at least in this triple header, so at least if it's a bad race, oh well. But now, heading into your session information, and like usual, this weekend, it is not a sprint race weekend. However, we will be getting onto a sprint race weekend next weekend. However, what does that mean for F1? Well, it means we get our 3 standard free practice sessions and qualifying and the race. Now, the race is always on Sunday and the qualifying is always on Saturday. However, for the practice sessions, FP1 and FP2 run on the Friday. However, this time around, FP1 for now, keep an eye out on the news because there might be a few changes to that. We don't have any reserve drivers or developing drivers coming into those seats. So FP1 isn't really one that's going to be worthwhile to watch, unless you really want to watch each and every session to see what the car setups could be like. But like usual, if you want to see what the qualifying sims are looking like, FP2 is the session for you. And if you want to see the race sims, more likely than not, this will be an FP3. So get on down to whichever session suits you the best. And especially with how close it could potentially be with Mercedes, Verstappen and Ferrari, who can come out on top of that and challenge the McLarens. So with this all set in stone, let's head over to your weatherman. Good morning, Saudi Arabia. And with Bahrain offering everything bar rain, let's see what Jeddah has to offer. Now, as you can see this weekend, the weatherman, doesn't know where his white shirt went. It's somewhere around the house, but hey, he's still in a shirt looking sharp as usual. So, will the weather reports be this sharp? Well, probably yes. Like usual, Saudi Arabia, was there ever going to be rain? Most likely not. There is 0% chance of rain on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, with highs potentially going around the mid-30s to high 30s. However, as we know, it is a night race, so our main sessions will be happening in the evenings where the temperatures will be cooling down. So again, it shouldn't be anything crazy. I don't think one team stands out above everyone else in these conditions. However, it might be a similar situation to Bahrain, where if the track temperatures are a little bit higher, maybe again the times will be a little bit slower than they were in 2024. Only time will tell. However, it's safe to say you won't be needing to use that no negative in F1 Fantasy. That is all from me. Back to you in the studio. Thank you very much, Weatherman. As informative as per usual. And this is the segment of the video where I stop looking ahead into Jeddah and we have our top 5 rundown of the things that happened in Bahrain. So, coming in at number 5. And I mean, you knew it was happening. The GOAT himself, Yuki Tsunoda, scored points. Red Bull's second seat. The curse hasn't been lifted, but he scored points. Now, for me, first of all, 9th in the Red Bull, pretty decent. But also, on a race weekend where Verstappen wasn't really battling at the front, this is actually better than it looks. Because potentially now, this is what I'm hoping for. If Verstappen is showing little pace at a track like Bahrain, when he is showing more pace potentially at a race like Jeddah, that means Yuki could potentially get up to like a P8, which would be brilliant to see another point scoring position for him. But finally, someone scores points in that Red Bull. Wow, what a long time running. Definitely worth mentioning. Number 4, the team that consists of 4 letters, and it is Haas. My God, did they stun everyone. They didn't really have the best qualifying 20th and 14th. Now, of course, also Ocon kind of binned it in Q2, meaning he couldn't do any better. It didn't matter in the end though, because they ended up getting both into the top 10. What a phenomenal drive. Ocon with a brilliant strategy, Behrman with some brilliant overtakes. My word, Haas are really proving us wrong this season. It really feels like every single time they can maximize their point output, they're doing it. And this is what teams like Alpine need to learn to do, because I generally think Alpine potentially have a little bit of a faster car than Haas, and they're just not doing it. Maybe it's because they have more of a qualifying pace sort of car, but everything's coming up Haas at the minute. Well done to them. Number 3, and I mentioned it at the start of the video, but we had a Norris bottle job. My word, when you had told me that he qualified P6, I was quaking in my boots. Now, that P6 was bad enough in the fastest car. However, if you had told me P6 to P3 before the race started, I would have been like, okay, that's not too bad. And P3, realistically, it keeps him at the top of the driver's standing. However, you have to look at it into more detail. Leclerc should have got past him that first attempt. Screwed it up again. Had to try another lap. And then because of all of this fussing about behind the Ferraris, he then got to the likes of George Russell, and it was too late. He tried one move into the final lap, did not work out, and Russell kept second place. It very much should have been a McLaren 1-2. I'm not salty about it. If you watched my live stream, you would know what I had to do. My God, I can't believe it. But yeah, Norris, another bottle job. Hopefully he can come back better, because if he carries on this way, Piastri's going to be looking very good coming into the next few races. Then in at number 2, we have Mad Max at his finest again. At one point, we even had Verstappen 20th place in this race. The hard tyres just weren't working for him. The strategy wasn't paying off over at Red Bull. The car just didn't seem to want to work for him. My God, it was actually crazy how he still got up to P6 in the end. I mean, it was good for him for that. But in the championship, it doesn't help him out. Verstappen not the best race for him. And then finally, in at number 1, I had to speak about it, Oscar Piastri, absolute domination. He qualified on pole, won the race with a safety car, by the way, around the midpoint of the race, still won the race by more than 15 seconds to second place. Absolute domination, completely deserved. He was my driver of the day, even though he didn't get shown much. It was him, then it was Behrman, then maybe it was Hamilton. I'm not too fussed about this one too much because Hamilton was at least okay, not like the Yuki Tsunoda Japan one. Oscar Piastri, congratulations, but the top 3 was Piastri first, Russell second, and Norris third. Again, Russell being in those podium positions has put him quite nicely in that championship battle. And then prediction-wise, of course, last week, if you didn't see my video, I did get it wrong. I said it would be a McLaren 1-2. So I had to go on my exercise bike for the length of the Bahrain Grand Prix, which was around 97 minutes. It wasn't as bad as I thought. But coming into this week, I have a little bit of a more audacious one. So the challenge will be a little less crazy. But forfeit-wise this weekend, if Ferrari do not get a podium in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, I will be doing that old ice bucket challenge. Not the nicest thing in the world to do, but considering Ferrari podium coming into this weekend, I'm not overly fond of Ferrari. We'll see what those upgrades potentially could show a bit more here. And then huge shout out to a comment I got on my last video, basically asking me why I don't just use the F1 Predicts for the predictions on these sorts of videos. And so from now on, I think that'll be a nice way to add that new tab in the F1 Fantasy game. So we'll start off with my top 3. And my top 3 is Piastri, Norris, Leclerc. Now, I'm only putting Leclerc there because of the forfeit. Realistically, I would put Russell, but I do think it's a Piastri weekend. He looked better at Jeddah before than Norris. My money's on Piastri for now. Then we go on to pole position, and my money is actually on Lando Norris. I have a good feeling that he's going to have a very Lando Norris weekend in Jeddah, with him getting pole position and then just bottling it into lap 1 with Piastri overtaking him, and that's all she wrote for the race. Then out of Hadjar and Lawson, who do I think will finish highest? Well, for me, it has to be Hadjar. It's been really disappointing seeing Liam Lawson's form of recent. Hopefully Racing Bulls have another car, potentially, that can fight for those top 10 finishes, and I think that would be the man himself, Isaac. Then how far will Lance Stroll get in qualifying? Piece of piss, Q1. What happened to him? The Stroll hype train fully ended, and he's been nowhere since Japan. How many finishes? Well, I've gone with 18, and in my head, I'm thinking that it's either going to be a lap 1 incident where 2 people crash out, or there's going to be very similar to last season where we get a driver error and some sort of malfunction with someone's car. Then will there be a safety car around Jeddah? 100% again, probably after lap 1. If not, someone will, we saw in Bahrain, even if you just leave a bit of debris, they'll bring out the safety car now. So for anyone to just clip the wall, that could easily bring out a virtual or a full-on safety car. Fastest lap will go to Oscar Piastri. I think he'll be in the front, clean air. That's all you need to know on that. Then I've gone quite audacious with my 2 times boost, and I put it on Red Bull to have the fastest pit stop. They had a nightmare in Bahrain, but I think they're going to come back stronger than ever. Then finally, for the last 2, I think that Fernando Alonso will beat the other 3 drivers here. Doohan, Lawson, Bortoleto. No one, I don't think, even in that Aston Martin, Alonso can't beat. And then finally, one of my favourite predictions for this race weekend, who will be leading their battle in the championship after Jeddah, and I've gone with Haas. I don't think Williams is going to have the best weekend. If they do, I could only see them around 9th, 10th. And I'm hoping Haas could scrape a point. Maybe I'm being a bit risky with Haas, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, those are my F1 predictions for this race weekend. Feel free to join my league and get in for some of the fun. And like always, I'll leave the link to this ZachGP league in there for you. So finally, let's head over to the ZachGP analyst, who will be giving an overview of the track.
The Jeddah Corniche circuit debuted as a Formula One race in 2021. And since then, it has become a staple for great high-speed racing, with one mistake being extremely costly. With 3 DRS zones, there are 2 main overtaking areas going into turn 27 and turn 1. But with only 25 overtakes last year, hopefully we get some better racing this time out.
Thank you very much, Bear, and that is all she wrote for this video. Bear in mind to keep an eye on any more F1 news coming out from Wednesday to Friday, as we could be seeing, I doubt it, any special liveries, FP1 drivers, like the reserve drivers like I mentioned, potentially coming in, so just keep an eye on that. However, that is everything you need to know for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Hopefully it's going to be one to remember. I'm really looking forward to it. It's one last weekend until we have a little bit of a break, and then we get even more F1 mayhem. So it really is all F1 at the minute, and I'm bloody loving it. But as always, like and subscribe if you like what you have seen. Comment down below how you feel about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Are you excited for it? Is it going to be better than the Bahrain Grand Prix? Is it going to be better than Japan? I've given you quite a high and quite a low there, so a good little middle ground potentially. But anyway, like always, I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Let's hope for some great racing, and I'll see you all later. Take care.